John, in light of what you've just shared with me, do you mind if I explain to you what I've learned about brokenness? Great. Do you mind if I draw it? I find it helps me if I can visualize it a little bit more. From what we just shared and your prayer request, it's really not a rocket science to realize that we live in a broken world. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of dying, there's a lot of disease, a lot of people doing crazy things to one another. At the same time, we see moments of beauty and of love, a child's laugh, a beautiful sunset on the lake. And those are just reminders that this brokenness was not always God's plan. In fact, his plan was a plan of wholeness and of love. The problem is, right from the get-go, John, we decided to go a different way from God's plan. We all do things wrong, right? I do things wrong, you do things wrong. We call that sin. And the problem with sin is that it separates us from God and is the cause of all this brokenness. Now here's a weird thing, John. Even though we cause this brokenness, we don't like to live in brokenness. So people do things to try and get out of their brokenness. Some people will chase after stuff, money. If I could just get a bigger house or a bigger car or a bigger boat, then I would feel good on the inside. Other people chase after relationships. If I could just meet my soulmate, that right person, they would complete me and then I would feel good. Still other people chase after authority. They want to be respected. They want to be thought well of. They want to have authority over people. There's Mr. Muscles. If I could just get that next promotion, if I could just become the CFO or the CEO. And then still others they just try and drown it out with alcohol and drugs. And there are all kinds of ways that we try to break away from this brokenness. And the problem with all of these things, John, is that they're like a bungee cord. The more we try to break away, they just snap us back into more brokenness. But the real problem with this is that if we die in this condition, we remain separated from God forever. But God is a loving God, and he doesn't want us to remain separated from him forever. So he provided a way out of this brokenness for us. And that way is Jesus. Jesus came down. He lived among us, and he lived a perfect life. Then he died on the cross. And when he died on the cross, after living a perfect life, he had no sin. He broke the power of sin to separate us from God. He rose again on the third day to prove that he had broken the power of sin. That separation is called death. He rose again to show that he had victory over death. And God sent his Son as a door, a way out of this brokenness. And there's three things that we need to do to go through that door, John. The first one is that we believe. We believe that Jesus came down and lived a perfect life, that he died on the cross, that he rose again after 3 days. The second thing that we need to do is that we need to trust. That means that we get off of our plan and get onto Jesus' plan. We make him the king of our life. We realize our way is not working. We want a better way, Jesus. We want to follow you. And the third thing that we need to do is tell him that. Tell God that we believe that Jesus came down, died on the cross, and rose again. We want forgiveness of sin, and we want him to be the king of our lives. The Bible tells us that if we take these steps, John, that we actually are restored back to God. And it says that we actually become a brand new creation. And then God sends us back in the world to tell people this good news of what Jesus has done, which is why I'm telling you today. John, there was a time in my life when I didn't know Jesus. I didn't believe any of this stuff. And even though I didn't believe it, I had this weird fear of death. I didn't know what was going to happen to me when I died. And I lived a pretty wild life. And then I met Jesus. And I took these steps, and he changed me. He made me a better person. I don't have that fear anymore. Now I've got hope, I've got purpose, and I've got joy in my life. John, there are really only two kinds of people in this world. There are people who are still stuck in this brokenness and haven't gone through this door, and there are people who have taken that step. Which of these would you say you are? This one? John, let me ask you a question. Is there anything stopping you today from taking these steps? No, that's great. John, I can lead us in a prayer and we can tell God that you believe in Jesus, that he came down, that he died on the cross, that he rose again, that you want forgiveness of sin, and that you want Jesus to be the Lord of your life. Is that something that you'd like to do right now, John? Great. Let me lead you in a prayer then.